is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Sexual violence is any type of unwanted sexual contact, ranging from sexist attitudes and actions to rape and murder. Sexual violence can include words and actions of a sexual nature against a person's will. An offender might also use force, threats, manipulation, or coercion to commit sexual violence. There is a social context that surrounds sexual violence, social norms that promote violence using power over others, unhealthy concepts about masculinity, the subjugation of women, subjugation of transgender women, subjugation of anyone in the LGBTQ community. And silence about sexual violence and abuse contribute to the occurrence of that very issue. Sexual violence thrives when it's not taken seriously. So it's important to create a safe space and to not doubt an individual who has a story. Everyone is affected by sexual violence. Every 73 seconds, an American is sexually assaulted. 73 seconds. That's every minute and 13 seconds. 1 in 2 women have experienced sexual violence other than rape in their lifetime. 1 out of every 10 rape victims are male. 1 in 6 boys are sexually assaulted before they turn 18. Nearly 50% of trans people are sexually assaulted at some point in their lifetime. 40% of gay men and 47% of bisexual men have experienced sexual violence. Of victims under the age of 18, 34% of victims of sexual assault and rape are under age 12. And 66% of victims of sexual assault and rape are age 12 through 17. This is going to be a very heavy topic, but it is necessary to talk about because there have been people that have been affected by it. And as you see in the statistics, it's so much more frequent than we presume it to be. So I'm creating this video for those who have been affected by this. In your own anonymous corner, you can to feel supported and acknowledged, and for these topics to be discussed out there to make this world a safer place, a place that respects individuals' bodies, minds, and souls. Now, given the fact that this is such a hard topic to discuss, imagine how hard it is for an individual going through it. These statistics will show. Did you know that 75% of instances of sexual assault go unreported? Common reasons why is because there's fear of retaliation from the assailant, fear of retaliation from the people who protect that assailant, the belief that the assault was a personal matter. That typically is also another reason why they go unreported. Belief that police would not do anything to help. Belief that police could not do anything for help. They did not want to get their offender in trouble with the law because it's problematic. While a lot of us, if we haven't been affected by a certain situation, it's so easier for us to say, why didn't this person do this? They should have done this. You really, really, really put yourself in someone else's shoes. You can see how hard it is to make the decision, how hard it is to really weigh the scope of everything that comes with the ripple effect. They also did not think that they had enough proof to report. Oftentimes that can be daunting to report because a person's going to be questioned if they have evidence, if they have proof, when sometimes a situation happens in that matter and in that second. But given the fact that there's a fear of whether they need to back it up with a lot of proof or not, and also that they do not want their families or loved ones to know about what happened. A lot of these factor into reasons why so many cases go unreported. About 3/4 of cases go unreported, and that's a huge chunk. Out of 1,000 sexual assaults, 995 perpetrators will walk free. 230 are reported to police, 46 reports lead to arrest, 9 cases get referred to prosecutors, 5 cases will lead to a felony conviction, and 4.6 rapists will go to prison for their crime. So it is understandable that while the fears may be one factor, there's also a huge, huge, huge issue and a hole in the system that does not hold rapists or assaulters accountable for their actions, that does not protect the victim from this instance or protect anyone that may cross the path of such a horrible person that will do this to individuals out there. There's something that needs to be fixed in this system that serves individuals who need justice served to them. So I am also making this to raise awareness so we can do our part to hold people accountable for their actions, including the justice system. Clarify more into what sexual violence is. The term sexual violence is an all-encompassing, non-legal term that refers to crimes such as sexual assault, rape, and sexual abuse. Sexual assault refers to sexual contact or behavior that occurs without explicit consent of the victim. Some forms of sexual assault include attempted rape, fondling or unwanted sexual touching, forcing a victim to perform sexual acts, penetration of a victim's body, and also known as rape. Now, I want to emphasize that this isn't the only form that sexual assault takes form in. Many of us think that it has to reach that level for it to be unwanted. It has to reach that level for someone's discomfort to be justified. It has to reach that level for someone's boundaries to feel violated enough. But oftentimes, if someone is violating your boundaries, if someone is violating your body, it's valid. It doesn't have to reach this extent, which is why I'm going to certain definitions of it to clarify that there's a huge spectrum. There's a gray area that sexual assault takes place in. There's intimate partner sexual violence, which is one that not a lot of people know about, because oftentimes when someone is in a relationship, they may think that things come with it, things are entitled to it, but that is not the case. There is a such thing as intimate partner sexual violence, and it's when the perpetrator can have any relationship to the victim, including the role of an intimate partner. And that's a really great area because a lot of people will question it even more because of that relationship. But being in a relationship with someone does not equate consent. Drug-facilitated sexual assault is another form of sexual violence where it occurs when alcohol or drugs are used to compromise an individual's ability to consent. And that is in no way, shape, or form meant to dismiss or belittle someone's experience because they're under the influence of some sort of drug or alcohol, because that's still not consent. Before being sexual with someone, you need to know if they want to be sexual with you too. It's also important to be honest with your partner about what you want and don't want. Consenting and asking for consent are all about setting your personal boundaries and respecting those of your partner. It's important to make a point of checking in if things aren't clear. Both people must agree to sex every single time for it to be consensual. You are allowed to change your mind at any time too. You can withdraw consent at any point if you feel uncomfortable. It's important to communicate to your partner that you are no longer comfortable with this activity and wish to stop. The best way to ensure both parties are comfortable with any sexual activity is to talk about it. Also remember, giving consent for one activity one time doesn't mean giving consent for increased or recurring sexual contact. Because when we don't do that, we just contribute to this issue that's going on. And the issue that is going on has started long ago, and it's still seen today, and it's known as rape culture. So in order to understand rape culture, it's where sexual violence is treated as the norm, and victims are blamed for their own assaults. And that's not fair. You cannot blame someone for getting harmed. But this is an issue that we have. This is a world where there is going to be dismissal. There is going to be belittling. There's going to be doubt. There's going to be people normalizing and belittling your experience, and that doesn't make it okay. It's a culture, and it's a toxic culture that's going on right now. It's not just about sexual violence itself, though. It can be about cultural norms and institutions that protect rapists, that promote impunity, that shame victims, and demand that people, predominantly women, or anyone that identifies as a woman, make unreasonable sacrifices to avoid sexual assaults. Examples of rape culture, to clarify it, is blaming the victim. They asked for it. Trivializing sexual assault. Boys will be boys. Sexually explicit jokes. Tolerance of sexual harassment. It's inflating false rape report statistics. So when it's kind of like when people were going through the Me Too movement, and there were people saying, well, look at all of these lies that have occurred, but you're undermining the people who have actually gone through it, and that's not fair. It's basically saying all lives matter. It's like saying, oh, well, not all men. It's like, no. Like, you need to acknowledge that these issues are there, and instead of trying to counteract or counter debates, listen to what's actually in front of you and what's actually happening, rather than trying to belittle and doubt and go into your own bubble of ignorance. Publicly scrutinizing a victim's dress, mental state, motives, and history. Well, what were they wearing? Rapists don't exist because of what someone's wearing. Rapists exist because rapists exist. I want to make that clear. Another example of rape culture is gratuitous gendered violence in movies and television. Defining manhood as dominant and sexually aggressive. Defining womanhood as submissive and sexually passive. Like, again, it's not about men and women. It's not a war between that, but it's a war with the fact that there are these constructs, these outdated constructs that have existed for so long, and they're harmful. They don't serve anybody. All they do is create these issues and inflate them and cause this constant cycle of toxicity where people are unsafe, people are discriminated against, and it goes on and on and on. Another example of rape culture is pressure on men to score, assuming only promiscuous people get raped. assuming that men don't get raped or that only weak men get raped, when that is not the case. Rape can happen to men too, and they're not weaker. It happens because these awful people exist that want to harm somebody. It's not the person's fault. Refusing to take accusations seriously, teaching people to avoid getting raped instead of teaching people not to rape. We need to emphasize educating people how to respect each other and make sure that they do not cross any barriers or boundaries of an individual that deserves to be respected. But until then, we need to make this world a safer space, which is why we need to have these conversations and we need to look out for one another. So here's a couple myths and facts. Myth: a person cannot sexually assault their partner or spouse. Fact: nearly 1 in 10 women have experienced rape by an intimate partner in their lifetime. Myth: if a victim of sexual assault does not fight back, they must have wanted it. Fact: many survivors experience a freeze response during an assault where they physically cannot move or speak, or they want to merely survive out of that experience, so they think that is the only way that will allow them to survive and not get murdered. Myth: men are not victims of sexual violence. Fact: 1.5% of all men have been raped, and 47% of bisexual men have experienced some form of unwanted sexual contact in their lifetime. Myth: if a person goes to someone's room or house, they're consciously assuming the risk of sexual assault. Fact: even if a person went voluntarily to someone's residence or room and consented to engage in some sexual activity, it does not serve as a blanket consent for all sexual activity. Myth: if someone doesn't say anything, they must mean yes. Fact: silence is not consent. Consent should be clear, verbal, yes, in all situations. It can be heartbreaking for survivors to work up the courage to speak their truth, just to have someone blame them for what happened, dismiss what they went through, or invalidate their feelings. It can make survivors feel unsafe, alone, and damage their self-esteem. The simplest statements can often go a long way when communicated in a caring manner. Comforting things to say to survivors are: I believe you. It's not your fault. I'm here for you. I'm so sorry that happened. You didn't deserve it. We'll get through this together. Things to avoid saying to survivors are: it happened so long ago, shouldn't you be over it? That's not that bad, it could have been worse. Everything happens for a reason. Or don't feel that way, stay positive. We need to validate the feelings and needs of survivors because it goes such a long way and it can affect their well-being and their mental health in the long run. So this is important for us to understand and for us to serve comfort and safety for individuals who speak out. Male, female, non-binary, transgender, LGBT, any culture, any race, we need to validate individuals who have survived sexual assault. The effects of sexual assault can wreak havoc on the mental health of an individual because something such as sexual assault is so traumatic, and the effects can produce a whirlwind of mixed emotions and consequently long-lasting mental health issues. Some of the most common psychological effects of sexual assault victims include feelings of shame or guilt, social isolation or withdrawal, problems sleeping, eating disorders, flashbacks or nightmares, avoidance of certain places, things related to the event, anxiety disorders, PTSD, depression, and suicidal thoughts or actions. So that's why we need to have these conversations, and that's why I want to provide these resources that can be available if you or a loved one have been sexually assaulted and are trying to cope the best way you can. National Sexual Assault Hotline can be reached at 800-656-4673. Planned Parenthood can be reached at 800-230-7526. You can also reach out to the website victimconnect.org. National Teen Dating Abuse Helpline can be reached at 866-331-9474. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 800-273-8255. I will have these resources pinned in the comment below so that way you can access them if you need it be. If you have gone through sexual assault, you're not alone. It's not your fault. You are believed, you are valid, and you will be safe, and you will get through this. If you are educating yourself, please check your own behaviors. Make sure that you leave space for consent. Make sure you respect a person's body, and you do not dismiss or belittle an individual when they talk and speak out about their experience. I hope this video serves well. Have a great mental health day. Thank you.